Hi, and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be learning about Saint Ignatius. Go forth and set the world on fire. When I think of Saint Ignatius, I think of a lifelong learner, a very competitive man, and a militaristic, strong, rugged type man. Saint Ignatius' feast day is celebrated on July 31st. Saint Ignatius was born in Spain in 1941, and he was one of 13 children, and he was actually the youngest of all those children. As a young man, Saint Ignatius had ideals of becoming a knight, and he would dream about just being a strong knight and winning the hearts of women. And this is what led him to eventually join the army, the Spanish army. Eventually, Ignatius moved up and became a military commander, but in 1520, in one of the battles that he was facing against Italy, he was wounded by a cannon, and it hit his leg, and he ended up having to recover and get off the battlefield. It was a long recovery, and this is when Saint Ignatius started to have his transformation within his heart. So like I said, this catastrophe would end up being the spark of turning his life towards Christ and taking it off of himself and focusing more on Christ. Going back to St. Ignatius' story, he's recovering in his brother's house, castle, because they grew up in a very wealthy family, and you got to think of him as like a man that like had a hard time sitting still. He was on the move. He was a military man. He liked to, he was like a mover and a shaker. So while he is sitting there recovering with his leg shattered, he was on the verge of not making it at some point. He decided to read these two books. So the two books that St. Ignatius started to read was called The Life of Christ, which is basically like a biography of the life of Christ, and the second one was about the life of the saints. While undergoing his recovery reading these books, St. Ignatius was prone to daydream, and he would daydream about his old dreams that he used to have, which was to be like a great war hero, to win the hearts of all these beautiful women, and he would go back and forth between daydreaming his old dreams of that type of mentality, and then he would start to daydream about the lives of the saints and becoming a great saint. And what this started to do was it started to build up in him this strong desire to live like a saint, or maybe not like a saint, but better than a saint. He was very competitive again by nature, so he was dreaming about how he could just become this amazing saintly man. So it's through this physical healing that he was forced to slow down, to go inward, that his transformation really started to take off, and he started to slowly become curious about giving his life over to Christ. One of the things that I found most interesting when reading upon the life of St. Ignatius was when I heard the story about how when he would daydream, these dreams that he would dream about being like a great war hero or having all these women, they would bring him joy, but he said that the dreams of becoming a great saint would bring him joy that lasted. So both daydreams brought him a sense of pleasure, but after a period of time, the pleasure for the worldly dreams kind of just like dissipated, whereas that saintly desire that started to grow within him, it would last. So like I mentioned earlier, St. Ignatius grew up in a privileged home. He grew up very wealthy, and so he really didn't have the best education. So after his recovery from his leg, St. Ignatius decided to get more of an education. So he went back to school to learn Latin, and he eventually ended up at the University of Paris. There he met a few other saints. I don't remember the name of them right now, but these were men that they collaborated together and they started to grow and deepen their faith. Some of St. Ignatius' greatest contributions was his development of these spiritual exercises, and he also started the Society of Jesus, which is now known as the Jesuits. Am I saying that right? Jesuits? Jesuits. Say that 5 times fast. But in 1540, Pope Paul III officially made the Society of Jesus a order. If you would like to learn more about the Jesuit Society, you can click down in the link below. On July 31st, 1556, St. Ignatius died, leaving behind a plethora of schools, institutions. St. Ignatius is the saint to go to during difficult times when you're trying to make a decision. Overall, St. Ignatius was an incredible man that really had an impact on the Catholic faith. We're going to end this video in the words of St. Ignatius: "Go set the world on fire." But not in a pyro sense. With your love. I'm just so excited. On July 1st, no, that's not true. On July 31st, 1556, St. Ignatius died, leaving behind, it's not funny, leaving behind, see now I have to re-record, spiritual tools, schools, oh that's why, it's like a hard thing for my tongue to say. Spiritual tools, schools, I understand why it's so hard now.